Hey guys, I am I always say I'm very excited, but this is a big deal to me right today because I have Jordan Chariton. He doesn't need introduction. Most of you, I'm pretty sure all of you know who he is from his reporting on Julian Assange and the WikiLeaks. His great reporting with Donna Brazil confronting her at the DNC, how many things, Flint water crisis, most of all, which is what I'm going to focus on, at least water issues across the country. And of course, his going from town to town discussing what normal everyday people are going through. And that's not what most people are doing. I think he's the only one who's actually going around doing that. So please give a warm welcome in the chat to Jordan Chariton. And Jordan, say hi.
Hey, thanks for having me. I'm glad we could make it work.
Me too. Me too. Thank you for coming so much. I appreciate it. This is just a huge honor for me, and I'm so nervous. I'm going to stumble all over my words because I've been watching you since the 2015 elections. When you were with TYT, and as soon as I could find you again, I found you and started following you again. And I'm just really impressed that you just keep going and going and going with the Flint water crisis while everyone else has forgotten about it. You've also I totally forgot to mention Standing Rock, which is another huge reporting job that you did. You were there in crazy conditions, and you talked to everybody, and you showed us what was really happening when the news wasn't reporting on it. So thank you very much for that. And I just want to, first of all, give everyone a quick update on what's going on with Flint. I know the election's coming on and right now, they're going on right now, and you're not like in that mind space, but on this channel, we talk about environmental issues. So that's what I want to focus on.
Yeah, definitely. And by the way, don't be so honored to have me. I'm just a growingly old man with an ice pack behind my back because I just had back surgery.
I understand that. That's been my share of surgeries.
Yeah, so that's kind of the juggling act because I'm trying to report on the campaign and do live streams every day while continuing to investigate and cover Flint. So it's a lot of work. Like yesterday, I had an hour call with a source of mine in Flint, like right before my live stream. So it's just a lot of juggling. But Flint, essentially what happened was obviously Governor Snyder, the Republican governor, who in my view should be in jail. He presided over the whole water poisoning. His term was up, so a new governor came in, a Democrat, new attorney general came in, a Democrat, and under the theory of Democrats are better than Republicans, that there was hope that there would be accountability as far as the water crisis. You would start to see actual momentum as far as the criminal prosecution. There were 15 state officials charged related to the water crisis. I actually met in February of this year with the Attorney General's office to present them my reporting that Jen and I, my co-founder, had broken a story about basically the state under Snyder cooking the water testing. So there was hope that real change was going to come in the form of accountability, criminal charges. And what our reporting shows is it's very likely the water is still contaminated there because they cooked the testing by flushing. So that's why a lot of people were surprised and dismayed when a few weeks ago, the remaining criminal charges were dropped again for everyone, including the director of the Michigan Health and the director of the Department of Health and Human Services for the state of Michigan. Also Eden Wells, who was the chief medical health officer, and other lower level people.
This just happened? Yeah. They just, oh my gosh, I missed that part for some.
Yeah, so all the charges were dropped a few weeks ago. And understandably, the residents of Flint are like, what in the, I don't know if I can curse here, so WTF.
Yes, you can, yeah.
Yeah, what in the fuck? So, and I was like, kind of, I was, I have a pretty good bullshit detector. So I was surprised because this is the same Attorney General's office I had just met with in person months before, presenting our reporting and our information because they were interested in what we found. And it didn't make sense to me. You're saying you're dropping the charges because by dropping the charges against the remaining people, it allows you to use new evidence, which I'm not a lawyer, I'm not a detective, but that doesn't make much sense to me. Why would you have to drop the charges for the remaining individuals to pursue or use new evidence? So I'm still trying to get confirmation on a few things, but my belief is they are dropping the charges because they are trying to get closer to civil, the civil settlement. And for whatever reason, even though the criminal cases should not be connected to the civil
No,
cases.
they should be two totally different.
Right. The state of basically, there's a giant class action lawsuit. Basically, you're talking hundreds, if not thousands, of Flint residents on it at this point against the state of Michigan, Rick Snyder, all that. So, for what I believe that the state, and I don't honestly think it's the Attorney General's office. I think it's coming from the top. They wanted those criminal charges gone because they want to basically settle. I worry about the amount that is being rumored about. It's much less than the people of Flint deserve. I'm meeting again with the Attorney General's office. I don't want to give a date because for safety reasons, but I'm meeting again with them later this month. And I have some pretty specific questions for them because I'd like to know, why did you have to drop these charges? If it's possible, if, as in many things we know with the mob and things like that, if somebody at the top that you were charging gives you the king and gives you information you need, you might dismiss charges against them. The Attorney General's office has provided talk about going after bigger fish. Obviously, the people want that to be Governor Snyder, who, I don't know if you knew this, also Harvard, which is known to invite criminals, and Henry Kissinger has spoken at Harvard and this and that. They actually offered ex-Governor Snyder a fellowship for the summer to teach about state management and civility.
The last person that needs to be teaching about that.
Yes. So the backlash against that was so thick that finally Snyder said, I'm not doing it. I actually think Harvard revoked it under public pressure, and to save face, they allowed Snyder to say it was his decision. But to put a bow on it, basically, the Attorney General's office says by dropping the charges, it's allowing them to go after higher fish. I am meeting with them at the end of this month. We'll see what information I get. They are also still interested in investigating what we found, which was the cooking of water testing. I showed them that there are ties between Governor Snyder and the Department of Environmental Quality, who cheated on the testing. So we're going to talk about that. There's also some other stories I'm working on that I can't quite get into because, believe it or not, it's actually, there's a lot of powerful organizations and individuals that definitely target journalists, not just on Twitter, but like physically. So I have to, protect myself. But it's not finished there. I was there last summer, so less than a year ago, and people are still getting rashes. People are still losing hair. People are still getting autoimmune issues, new things popping up. I speak with people that literally in the shower, their eyes itch. In some cases, they feel like they're going to faint. This is happening not 5 years ago, 5 months ago, 5 days ago. It's still happening.
It's still happening. But a couple $1,000s will make all that go away and they'll be fine, right?
And in our documentary, which we're still working on getting picked up, we show, I mean, I still can't get it out of my head. We sat on the porch of a young couple, the young mother, she's 27, her baby, 1-year-old black baby, sitting on her lap, white blisters all over her legs, arms, earlobes. They had just moved into that home a month prior. Skin was perfect before then. She puts her in the water. She didn't get those blisters from like watching television. So, and by the way, when I interviewed them a month before was when Governor Snyder declared the water safe. So if that tells you anything, this is what's happening.
So talk about the source of this contamination. Is it all just the lead pipes, or was it the actual where they were pulling the water from?
Oh, boy.
And how did that get poisoned? Talk about that. So
the Flint River, we should start with the Flint River. The Flint River, which is what they switched to, people that live in Flint, I mean, it's secondhand knowledge when when they mentioned, oh, we're switching to Flint River, they're like, what? I mean, you have General Motors was dumping its waste products in the Flint River dating back to the early 20th century. From General Motors to other things, other industrial pollution that came elsewhere and flowed into the Flint River. So there was also agricultural waste dumped into the Flint River. You have fracking that's been dumped into the Flint River. So not exactly a clean water source. For people in New York, I compare it to the Hudson River. There's also, I mean, frankly, it was heavily industrial polluted. With that said, the problem was temporarily they could have switched to the Flint River, which was the goal, but there were two problems. Number one, the water treatment plant, water from water sources like the Flint River, it goes to a treatment plant for the final stage of treatment where chemicals are added into the raw water to make it safe. So the treatment plant, the Flint Water Treatment Plant, this came out pretty soon after this became a national crisis. The treatment plant was sounding off alarms before they made the switch to the Flint River to the Department of Environmental Quality. We are not equipped to treat this water. We don't have the staff. We don't have the technology. The plant was very outdated. Wasn't no updates or upgrades in decades. We do not have the capacity to be a full-time water treatment plant for the water source for over 100,000 people. The population was over 100,000 people at that time. So you have, in one case, a treatment plant that literally can't safely treat the water. They don't have the equipment. They don't have the staff. Secondly, by law, this is a law, you're supposed to add corrosion control chemicals into water bodies around the country because most of the pipes that the water is flowing through in Utah, in Michigan, in New York, wherever, are 50 to 100 years old. In Flint, you're talking closer to 60 to 70 years old. So most of those pipes are by age corroded and have corrosion. So adding the corrosion control chemicals into a body like the Flint River, what it does is it basically neutralizes the acidic nature of the water from all the things I listed, the dumping of waste products, the fracking, the agriculture, all that. So they didn't add the corrosion control chemicals into the Flint River because they were trying to save money.
I got to tell you, it makes me nervous to add more chemicals to the water. Has anyone looked into what those chemicals do?
These are common chemicals added like throughout the country. I don't want to pretend to be a chemist or a biologist on your show, but from everything I understand from water experts I've talked to, the problem isn't the corrosion control chemicals. The problem was not putting them in there because really without them, what you had was basically acid water going through old pipes for 18 months. And what happened was, because basically that corrosion control chemicals, what it does is it adds a protective coating around the pipes so that lead, if it's a lead pipe, and it doesn't necessarily just need to be a lead pipe. You could have galvanized pipes, or you could leach off lead. A pipe could be part copper, part lead. So it's not only like exclusively lead pipes. Some pipes have a mix of different material. So without that corrosion control chemical, there was no layer of protection, and the lead started leaching out. But I think what got lost in all of this, and the corporate media, shocker, did a terrible job. All the focus was on lead. It wasn't just lead. There was bacterial concerns. That's what happened with the Legionella outbreak, where people today, as of January, another person died in Flint of Legionella.
Wow.
There were bacterial issues coming from the water. TTHMs, which are volatile compounds that can cause cancer, that was found in the water. And this is the conglomeration of multiple things being dumped into the Flint River from byproducts from General Motors for years, industrial waste, you name it. Yeah. It wasn't just lead. There was toxins in the water that were going through toxins through the Flint River that were then going through the pipes. So you had bacterial issues, TTHMs, PFAS, which if you're familiar, PFAS, they're finding these now all over the country. These are also cancer-causing chemicals that are byproducts during the process of manufacturing products like Teflon. So these products, during the manufacturing of Teflon, PFAS, are developed, and we've found them dumped in waters in the Ohio River Valley, in North Carolina, in Michigan, and these were also found in that water. So basically, it's a clusterfuck of many different chemicals, and the problem is the EPA and the state of Michigan were primarily looking at lead and copper, and not looking at bacteria and these other things. So, I mean, it's really like Russian roulette, and it's not a shocker. This is in a poor, predominantly Black community. A lot of poor white people in Flint. They're all poor, basically, but 58% of Flint is African-American, and the rest is white and Latino. But essentially what you have here is not just a case of water poisoning, not just a case of governmental corruption, because if you want to give the governor and his administration the benefit of the doubt that they didn't do this intentionally, well, the response after was intentional, or the lack of response. And it's also a case, I don't bother calling it environmental racism, it's just racism. I mean, this is racism. If this happened in Mitt Romney's neighborhood in Utah, or the Lower East Side where I am now of Manhattan, the National
I can attest to that, because in Utah, there was 3 events that I can remember so far this year where water was contaminated, all in more, fancier neighborhoods, and it was taken care of right away. There was one area that had a boiling order for like 3 weeks or something like that. But other than that, I know there's issues going up towards the Native American country where there's all the fracking and mining going on, but they don't even report on those issues. So it's insane. But I was going to ask about the contributors to the problems, the companies that put all the contaminants in the water. Is anyone trying to hold them accountable at all?
Well, basically what you have here, and this is the true, just disgusting story behind the story of the Flint water crisis that never got told. And honestly, there's a lot of people of high power that want to make sure this story isn't told. The Flint water crisis really was a privatization scheme gone wrong. So what happened was Rick Snyder became governor in 2011, and he basically said during his campaign, pure Michigan. And he basically wanted to privatize the water system in Michigan, in addition to some other systems in Michigan. And he's not the first. I mean, we know Republican governors and some Democrats want to do this all over the country. So what they were doing was creating a new pipeline called the Karagandhi Water Authority. They say that this was not a privatized water pipeline, but if you actually look into it, it was. So this pipeline was basically, Flint was on the Detroit water system for 50 years without a problem. Flint would purchase water from Detroit, and that's how Flint served its citizens. So, and it wasn't just Flint. A lot of people got their water from Detroit. Detroit was basically the monopoly in Michigan as far as the main water source. So basically, Governor Snyder, in terms of trying to privatize the water system, and his donors, which a lot of them are big agro, fracking and all that. While I was at the Young Turks, I did a report on this. You look at his top donors, it's a big fossil fuel, big agro Hall of Fame.
Yeah, so, I believe I've seen that, yeah.
Yeah, they wanted to create a new water pipeline. It was basically going to be in place of Flint getting its water from the Detroit water system. Most experts you talked to said there was zero need for this at all. The governor and his administration spun it that this would save Flint money. Only emails came out showing that at the last minute, Detroit literally cut its rate in half, 50% for Flint. So Detroit cut it down in half to keep Flint as its customer, because Flint was Detroit's biggest customer. And it would have saved Flint as compared to this new water pipeline. I think they were saving 20% by staying on Detroit, staying on Detroit at the discounted rate, as opposed to going on this Karagandhi Water Authority. So needless to say, it was a scam in the first place. Well,
absolutely. If
you have a privatized water pipeline, which is what the Karagandhi Water Authority is, What do you need a lot of water for? Fracking.
That's one. Yeah. Hundreds of thousands of gallons are used in fracking every day and every home.
Irrigation for other agriculture, to irrigate your farms and things like that. So basically, this Karagandhi Water Authority, they could take out a lot more water for those purposes than you can in a Detroit water and sewage pipeline that is going towards the people. So based on my reporting, my research, at this point, I've talked to hundreds of people in Flint and that know this situation. That was really the game. That's why they were building this unnecessary water pipeline and switching Flint off it. So the Flint River was always supposed to be temporary until the Karagandhi Water Authority was built. Problem was, everything we talked about in the first question, they didn't add the proper chemicals to treat the Flint River water, and what happened. So there's also other elements of there was a lot of shady dealings with who got the bonds for the Karagandhi Water Authority, Wall Street involved, a lot of nefarious things that have not come to light yet. So when you ask who were the sources, basically it was a lot of donors to Rick Snyder. I don't want to get into which foundation because I'm actively looking into it, but there was a pretty powerful foundation invested in this Karagandhi Water Authority. That this foundation, I think people in Michigan know what I'm talking about, but I don't want to say the name just because I don't need to get on their radar quite yet. And there was also, Viola Water, which has been privatizing water, not only all over this country, but all over this world. They got contracts as far as the Karagandhi Water Authority. So there's a lot of sources at fault here. And the shameful thing is, look at America. Look right now what we're talking about. Jeffrey Epstein basically got a bed and breakfast jail sentence down in Florida where he could go to his office basically 12 hours a day, I think it was. And I'm sure they pampered him while he was in the cell. There is not one person in jail related to this water crisis. There has not been, Congress gave Flint over $100 million, like in many other instances. Well, where did that money go? It went to the state of Michigan's bank account, and Governor Snyder and his administration were the ones allowed to distribute it. Well, you talk to people in Flint, where has all that $170 million gone? Because it's not all the money went to Flint, I can promise you that. So it's one corrupt injustice after the other. And that's why I stay on this, because to me, I always say this to the audience, to me, it's not just about Flint. Obviously, my loyalty in this story is to the people I've met in Flint. I've interviewed too many sick people to even talk about. It's given me nightmares, to tell you the truth. Forget professionally. It's just changed me as a person. It really puts into context your problems in life. We all have our issues, but we all also have privilege that we don't realize. And my issues here in New York or things that happened in my career over the last few years, they're not even comparable to what the people have gone through there. I'm not going to stop, because honestly, this is not about only Flint. This is about, do we live in a country or a corporation? Do we live in a democracy or, frankly, a sociopathic, totalitarian oligarchy? And obviously, we know there's three legal systems. There's one for rich white people. The second is for what's left of the white middle class. And the third is Black people, brown people, and indigenous people. So do we have one legal system? No. And to me, most importantly, once the cameras leave, once the microphones leave, once the remaining coverage leaves, this is normalized. And you can't normalize a whole community being poisoned and then being left to die. So that's why I'm so passionate about it. And
I appreciate that. Thank you so much. And, okay, so your passion's Flint. I am big. What really got me started in doing the videos and all that is what happened in Vernal, Utah with it was the air that they were testing. And because a midwife moved up there and she noticed there was like a big abundance of stillborn births up there. So she started to get the air tested and everything. And the emissions in a town of 30,000 people ended up being as bad as the emissions from 100,000 cars, or I think it's something like 3 times the LA basin in a small town in eastern Utah. And it's all from the fracking, and they want to steal more land from the Native Americans and frack more land, and they're poisoning water. I drive up there all the time, see this huge giant tailings pond right above the water source for the Native Americans in that small town, and more destruction every time I drive by. So there's that. But yes, let's talk about where it's happening all over, and how much clean water do we have left.
I also want to add Bears Ears.
Yes, that's another passion of mine that I talk about a lot when I first started. I cut my teeth on Bears Ears and the vernal issues. So yeah, I mean that's huge. They're mining uranium in where Bears Ears was, all around there, and they're trading school trust lands that were given to the state for the schools. They're trading them for those, the lands where the monuments were and where the artifacts are, and then they're mining it. They're trading the useless land for the good land, and then they're mining it and letting private corporations just do whatever the hell they want to do and make a profit off of it. And it almost makes me want to cry just talking about it, because it's horrible. It's horrible. And they paid a couple of Native Americans to come on TV and be representatives, and even go testify in a committee hearing in Congress, and they were just lying through their teeth, and they weren't even representing the tribe. They just happened to be Native American people that they plucked out and paid them. I know way too much about that. It just makes me ill. So that's my passion, and I know it's going all over the country. But Utah's a big place where it's happening, because all the federal lands that they're just turning over for mining.
Well, that's kind of the overwhelming part for me, because and I think Jen, my co-founder of Status Quo, feels the same way. Honestly, like, I can't even tell you how many emails, Facebook messages, DMs, I mean, just smoke signal I get. Can you come cover my community? The water's contaminated, the air's contaminated, the mining, the fracking, the drilling, I mean, you name it. And it's like, I feel kind of like sometimes like I'm an octopus, because it's like I'm being spread to so many places, and each place is important. I try to cover as much as I can, but honestly, I've said from the beginning, even when I was at the Young Turks, it might not be a sexy topic. It certainly doesn't go viral. Like, trust me, if a video on water contamination in Utah versus like Trump tweeted this about Roseanne, like, that's going to do better. But I don't do that, because to me, like, why be a journalist if you're not trying to like save the world or save people? And frankly, if you look at it just objectively, there's a reason all the hedge fund people in New York and the finance people, one of the top surging investments is water. Why is that?
Because it's going to be more valuable than gold really soon.
Yep, because there could be a shortage of clean water. And by the way, people ask me all the time, I don't even know if this is clean. Plastics is a
plastics.
whole. Yeah,
there's like micro pieces of plastic. There's off-gassing, all kinds of things in bottled water. So
it comes down to, what do you drink? I'm not doing Brita. That doesn't really completely. I mean, you could do reverse osmosis in your home. It's not cheap. So I think what you're talking about, and I definitely want to come to Utah. We're working on funding. So if there's any wonderful progressives in the audience that want to talk, email me, info@statusquo.com. We are doing things a little radically different. We're not taking money as a company from big corporations, from special interests, and we're trying to grow through a membership model, which is a lot harder. It takes a lot longer, but it's a lot. It creates a media network that actually allows me and my colleagues to be liberated. Like, I don't have to answer to anyone above me. I answer to the viewers. I cover things they are passionate about. I take the feedback from them if they like something, if they don't like something. I don't have to kowtow or have calls with like big investors or things like that. I'm not interested in that. I'd rather not do journalism that way. And also, I think what's so liberating about Status Quo is, for example, the story I was able to break with Jen, who she knocked on every door with me in Flint last summer. We broke the story that the state of Michigan was basically cooking the numbers. They were flushing residents' water lines right before testing, which is illegal.
Right.
I would have never
That's
been
why you
able.
have the documentary Flushing Flint.
I would have never been able to do that at the Young Turks. And it's not to crap on them, but like that took almost a month. We went in the summer and the fall of just going to Flint and not going live. We did not go live for 2 weeks in the summer and a week in the fall because we didn't want people to know what we were doing. Like, we don't want the state of Michigan to know what we're looking into for our own protection. So we didn't go live. And, you know, at the Young Turks, like I was there to like do videos and get, you know, you have to create content. Whereas in your own company, you actually are liberated to actually investigate things. And sometimes when you're investigating things, you don't have time to go do a live stream every day, or you don't want to go live. You don't even want people to know where you are in some cases. So it's very liberating to have your own thing. And it's hard work. Like I'm pretty much working 17, 18 hours a day, but it doesn't feel like work. So that's the beautiful thing. And most importantly, I firmly believe the more independent media we have, like not just like in studio covering the horse race, but like out in the field, spotlighting these stories. The point is you got to wake more people up to what's going on, because it's not just progressives, believe it or not, who care about clean water or the environment. There's a lot of conservatives that do too, establishment people. I mean, water is not exactly like a controversial topic.
Right.
So the more people that get, like my mother and father are classic, especially my father. I love him, but he's just misguided. He watches Fox News. He likes Trump. But when I've shown them some of my stuff in Flint, when I've shown them some of my stuff in Standing Rock, every single time, why isn't CNN covering this? Why isn't Donald Trump doing anything about it? They don't know. Nobody knows this is going on. So that's why we're doing what we're doing.
I relate with you there. Utah is a huge Trump supporting state. I mean, it's only gotten worse. So my parents are the same way. They watch Fox News, and I get all kinds of crap when I talk about any progressive issue. They're like, no, can't do anything about it. It'll lead to socialism. And I fail to see the connection, but I'm like, what, you don't like water? Don't like, you don't like to see wild animals? You don't like, yeah, never mind. I guess I won't get through to you then.
You know what? I promise you, Republicans will start to care. And the people that have been calling this all like, you tree hugger liberals, they're going to start to care when their water starts turning brown or purple.
Why didn't anyone tell us? Why didn't anyone tell us?
They're going to start to care when their children have to start wearing masks outside, which I saw in St. Louis when I covered. Basically, there was a landfill next to a nuclear waste site, and children literally have to wear masks outside in that St. Louis neighborhood because it is so toxic. From the Manhattan Project days, they had nuclear waste there, and it wasn't sealed properly. So the smell going out into that air, honestly, I don't know how people live there, because I was at this one woman's house. HBO actually did a documentary about this. I think Atomic, forgot the name. Atomic Homefront, I think it was called. There's just a smell. I couldn't breathe for longer than an hour. Same thing in East Chicago, Indiana, when I went to cover the lead crisis there. That got very little attention. My cameraman from TYT at the time, we were standing in this low income black apartment complex, government housing complex. My nose totally closed up. I was like, I don't know how people live here permanently, because it's just between the air and the water. And also, this is not just a crisis of the environment. This is also a crisis of corrupt government. A lot of people think that the EPA suddenly turned corrupt under Trump. The EPA has been covering up a lot of these things before Trump.
Oh, a lot.
Monsanto?
Can I just say Monsanto?
Oh, don't get me started.
Right.
Yeah. I mean, Flint happened under Obama. He went to drink, take a sip of water there and say, oh, my EPA tells me it's fine if you drink it with a filter. Well, I've been there 14 times since 2016. It's not fine. And all it takes is a journalist or just an interested citizen. Go down there if you want a weekend getaway. I'm being a little sarcastic, but if you want to see what's going on, if you live within driving distance, go speak with people in Flint. They will tell you the water is not fine. But the problem is we live in I call it the United Corporations of America, and it's just it's a haves and a have-nots. And the people of Flint, they lost the life lottery because they were born into poverty, a lot of them. And essentially, from the state level to the federal level, they don't give a damn. If this community gets poisoned, in other countries, New Zealand, for example, it's not environmental, but somebody shoots a mass shooting,
Bam.
assault weapons banned. This is what happens in governments that actually are there to protect the people and serve the people. But we don't have that anymore. And that's what drives me crazy about the Democratic Party. Of course, the Republican Party is beyond fixing. I mean, they're basically working for the corporations. But you cannot defeat the Republican extremism and fascism and Tea Parties and all these radicals with like a Democratic Party filled with Bob Doles and basically country club Republicans. You don't defeat fascism with country club Republicanism. And that's why, it's very important. It's very, very important, not just at the national level, but I do believe what Bernie said. It has to start with local elections, because it's going to take a lot more than Bernie if he makes it. It's going to take new state level representatives, activists running for local office, PTA moms, you name it, that are not going to be corrupted. And honestly, I also say the same thing about journalists. We need more independent journalism. I mean, if I had the funding, I would hire a freaking army, because trust me, I ain't getting any younger. This is a lot for one or a few journalists to take on all these stories. It's a lot of work, and I would like to hire more journalists. But even if it's not status quo, you don't need to have a YouTube channel to be a journalist. You could go to your city council meeting in Utah or whatever. Trust me, they're selling you down the river right there, 5 minutes down the street at city council meetings. You have no idea what they're doing, because most people don't show up. Most people are watching The Bachelor.
Right.
Show up to city council meetings.
At least call them, email, do anything you can. Just put some pressure on them, whatever you can do. And I've been encouraging a lot of people to do YouTube. I invite them on my show, just people who watch my show. I invite them on 2 days a week. I have Mondays and Wednesdays where I invite people on. Women's Wednesdays, mostly it's men on Monday. But anyway, we only have.
I'm not knocking people from creating YouTube channels. All I'm saying.
Oh no, I know you're not. You're obviously you're here on mine, so that's great. I just wanted to get to some of the people's questions really quick, because it's 50, or it's not 50. Let's see, it's 7:07 there.
Yeah.
So I'm watching my clock, but so we only have a few more minutes before you have to rush off. And
I got another 15 for you.
Do you? Okay. Yeah. Well, fantastic. So if you guys want to put some questions, please tag me or make it easy for me to see them. Put a symbol or something. If you don't know how to tag me in the questions, I'm not monetized yet, so that's why you can go ahead and swear all you want.
Can I tell you something?
Sure.
Literally every single video I did from the Democratic debate in Miami was demonetized. Every single one.
Wow.
I had for each one I had to file an appeal or whatever. But it's like, I'd say 8 out of 10 videos now are being demonetized. It's crazy.
Yeah, I have another friend who's a YouTuber that was going through that. He went and looked at his channel, and it was a really mild channel, and every single video on it had been demonetized, even though it's not a monetized channel. It just said it could never be monetized. He has enough, he could be monetized if he wanted to. Okay, so there's a question. I saw it. Where'd it go? Something about, okay, there it is. Don Hooligan. How are we going to keep the DNC from cheating?
Oh, it's funny. We just did it. Well, not funny, but we just did a segment on that today, because we hired a new reporter that we're trying to keep. I don't know if we're going to be able to for that long, just funding. But Marcus is in Nevada, so he's looking into, now they have virtual caucuses in Iowa and Nevada. Does that sound comforting to you? A virtual caucus? So 10% of the caucus is by phone or online. They haven't quite explained what virtual means. I don't know if it's phone. I don't know if it's Skype. I don't know if it's an app. We also don't know who the vendors are that are going to be.
Yeah, that's kind of important to know. It needs to be open source. So
right. We don't know what the safeguards are. We don't know who is in charge of it. So if something goes wrong or awry, I don't want the DNC in charge of it. I don't want the Iowa or Nevada Democratic state parties in charge of it, because all the state parties are just as establishment and corrupt as the DNC federally. So there's a lot of unknowns. And also, the Iowa caucus, I don't know about Nevada, but the Iowa virtual caucus, apparently the virtual part is weighted 10% and the in-person caucus is weighted 90%. Well, what happens if who generally, not to discriminate against older voters, but of the age groups, who tends to do things online? So
the younger.
Right. So if more Bernie voters do the virtual caucus, but their vote is weighted 10%, and the people who actually go is weighted 90%. Again, Marcus is working on finding out all these things. He's trying to dig up and develop sources, because to me, whether it's intentional rigging or just gross incompetence, there's also no guarantee that they're going to do test runs before this. So you're going to do this for the first time in the first voting state that obviously a narrative gets set based on who wins, who comes in second. And I've read the stories. I don't know who the vendor is. I don't know the accountability. So what are we going to do to stop it?
Wow.
To tell you the truth, I think the people need to go on offense rather than being reactionary. So I think Berth, I'm not an advisor to Bernie's campaign, but I think his campaign better be sounding the alarm before the caucuses, before the primaries.
Absolutely. But saying he'll support whoever wins no matter what, that bothered me. Let's get on. As Shiva, can you put her question up? She tagged me, and then go ahead and, sorry, I'm talking to Oz. Put up any questions you see, because it's getting hard for me to keep track. They're going by really fast. So start with us, Shiva, and sorry, I'm not used to having this many people on. I mean, they go by fast anyway. I don't know how you do it.
Yeah, they're coming in slow at my end. So
okay, grab us, Shiva's.
Yeah, I can't see it. Can you just give me the?
Okay, I'll just read hers really quick.
Yeah, read it.
What does Jordan think about existing oil pipelines across the U.S. to lines that carry rainwater from drought-stricken areas? And she would spread the idea. I don't know.
What do I think of pipelines that carry rainwater?
Yeah, water from areas that have a glut to areas that don't. I'm kind of worried about that too. I don't know. That one, I'm conflicted.
What did Jordan think about converting all existing oil pipelines across the U.S. to lines that carry rainwater from flood areas? I think, frankly, it's not going to happen. But I think most of the existing oil pipelines need to be shut down and taken out of the ground, because fracking, most of these oil pipelines are now fracked gas. Fracking is one of the biggest contributors to the climate crisis. Right.
Poisoning the water, as well as using up, thousands and thousands of gallons and emptying reservoirs. And then, it's.
But I don't really know what she's saying. I don't really know how that would work, because you take the oil out and put the rainwater in. Well, there's been oil going through that pipeline for decades.
Yeah. Also, flood water is contaminated because it's went through sewage systems and all kinds of chemicals. But
also, you might not need to do that to the person who asked the question. If we immediately switch to renewables, wind, solar, you would see less drought, because part of the drought is these pipelines, the carbon emissions, the methane being emitted. By the way, it's not just the pipelines in the ground. Don't forget the pipeline compressor stations. So the pipeline compressor stations that are not underground, they're above ground, and they help basically the compressor stations keep the pressure on the gas as it goes through. This is for natural gas pipelines as opposed to crude oil pipelines. But these compressor stations are emitting all sorts of havoc into the air. We saw this in Union Hill, Virginia. We covered this. A historically Black community was being poisoned through the air by a compressor station there. So I don't know about taking the oil and putting the rainwater, but I do know, as Josh Fox says, we have the capability to stop oil immediately. We just obviously don't have the political system to make that happen.
Right. I think the big thing we need to do is stop all the wars, bring our troops home, for one, because that's the biggest contributor to pollution, and the biggest user of fossil fuels is the U.S. military. So let's start with that. I have other ideas on as far as handling the other pollution. If you watch my channel, you already know that, but yeah.
And real quickly, by the way, why I personally, some people don't like this, but I'm just being honest. I'm not telling people what to do, but if it were Warren versus Trump, I would vote for Warren. I don't think she's Hillary Clinton. With that said, I think Warren is missing the trees from the forest. You're talking about all these plans and all these policies for domestic and income, shrinking the income gap and all those things. Tulsi Gabbard is right. You can't do any of that stuff without first tackling the military-industrial complex.
Yes.
And you can't tackle the military-industrial complex if you're voting for a $715 billion defense budget, which she just did. So I don't know. I mean, I know about modern monetary theory, and we technically have all the money to do everything, but that's unfortunately not the system we're working under. So you have to cut this military budget, I think, by 60 to 70%, and you'd still have a stronger military than in any other country. But you can't get these domestic policies through if you don't take a machete to that military budget, in addition to shutting down these bases around the world.
Absolutely. Okay, let's go on to the next question so we can get as many as possible. Dave, with $27, will you put that one up, $27? Put it on the screen. There you go. I can't read it now. Is Jordan going to be covering some of the young up-and-comers who are running for Senate and Congress in 2020? People like Sema Hernandez or Joshua Collins, etc.
Yeah, I actually already interviewed Sema a couple months ago. I will follow up with her as her campaign continues. I think Joshua Collins, I'm sorry, Josh, if you're watching, you emailed me. I'm just honestly flooded and overwhelmed and very understaffed at Status Quo. Yes, we are going to. That's part of like our funding call, because I'd like to cover more local candidates like in the field. So yeah, I will be, whether it's in the field, Skype interviews, whatever. There are progressive rock stars all over this country, and the common denominator is very few are getting media coverage. So yeah, I will be. It's just, we need more staff. I mean, that's first of all, we need more funding to get more staff, because honestly, I don't want to get in the weeds, but like way too much of my time is spent publishing our videos on YouTube and tweeting our stuff out, which takes a lot of time out of like my reporting and doing interviews. So I'm hoping as we grow, we'll be able to hire more people.
Awesome. Okay, put Sandy's.
Oh, and by the way, if you're watching or you know people who are running for office and are progressive, info@statusquo.com. That's info@statusquo.com. Email us if you're running or you know somebody that's running, and we'll check it out. And can't promise you anything, but we'll try.
Okay, so Sandy from Environmental Coffee House. Great channel, by the way, guys. Jordan, will you run for office?
Hell no.
I knew the answer. You're too busy keeping those people in mind.
I got to tell you the truth. I don't mean nothing against like people like Bernie, like visionaries, but I think you could do create just as much change through journalism than maybe even more change through politics. Until money is removed from politics, it's a heavy lift to create real change. So, and I think I'm too brash and real for politics.
Gotcha. Yeah, I mean, I couldn't do it either. But I like my opinion known, and I like to push the truth as much as possible. So find another question for me, Oz. By the way, I forgot to say $27. Dave has an awesome channel too. Obviously, being named $27. He's on the right side of the fence. Okay, so Gazar, I watched someone rinse his car off for 10 minutes with a power washer. Why not ban power washers? That's a huge waste of water.
Yeah.
So yeah, we need to stop that stuff. And by the way, I push hard on just getting rid of lawns altogether. Maybe have a park for everyone in communities to share, but why waste all that water? We're gonna have food shortages with all the flooding and everything going on. So,
well, by the way, in Africa and other third world countries, they're putting time limits on the amount of time you could shower, how many showers you could take a week, because they already have a water shortage.
It'll happen here soon. It's not too far behind. I'm confident of that. So, okay, as you're being slow.
Sorry, there's not a lot of tagging of you going on or questions. But
I know. Well, we're about 22, so oh my gosh, we should probably just let you go so you can get ready for your other thing. But and maybe I could talk to you for just a second after. Sure. Really, really enjoyed having you on. Thank you guys for coming. Sorry, they get so funny in the chat, especially towards the end, and I'm trying not to pay attention to that. I'm used to just talking to them while I'm on. But everybody here already knows who you are, I'm pretty sure, except for maybe some of the people that are out of the country might not, but most of the people would know you. Thank you for all your hard work. Keep going. If you need me to push any message, please let me know, and I'll try for you. As long as it's environmentally related, which is mostly what you do, so that works for me. Keep up the good fight, and I guess we'll talk to you soon.
Yeah, thanks for having me, and would love to come back when I have a little more time.
When the election settles down.
Yeah.
Sounds good to me. I would love to have you back. That would be fantastic. All right. We're going to run the intro, and then I'll talk to you for just a sec.